So thank you so much to these amazing sponsors in our sector supporting this conversation, national, even international dialogue. And we just want to say thank you for your investment in the conversation. Julia Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. And then myself here, Jarrett Ransom, CEO of the Raven Group, also known as your nonprofit nerd. But today, Julia, we're really excited to have Camille Ridley, Donor Development Officer with the American Red Cross. And Camille, I am so excited, one, to have you on the show and to have this conversation with you. I have a feeling we might be able to nerd out over some similar commonalities, but I'm excited to learn more because the American Red Cross has been around for a really long time, and I think that, probably everybody knows what the American Red Cross does, but I'm curious, and I'm sure this will come out through the entire show today, is how the Red Cross has had to reimagine its own programming during this pandemic. So all of that we'll touch on today, but Camille, welcome and thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I am ready to nerd out because when it comes to nonprofit and philanthropy chatter, I just get very passionate and very excited. So let's nerd out. But yes, the American Red Cross, my question I'll start with is, what would we do without the American Red Cross? I ask myself that almost every single day because there is so much work that the Red Cross provides, starting with our mission. So we prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies, and they're happening all day, every day here, and suffering, and with the power of the volunteers and the generosity of our donors. And right now, the American Red Cross has over 300,000 volunteers, and my goodness, they are a mighty force. I have never in my career seen a group of volunteers as passionate and dedicated as the volunteers that we have here. And hearing their stories, it's amazing. And the work that I do, I am in contact with them quite regularly, but with the Red Cross, we have core values and they resonate. And that is why I work for the Red Cross and why so many people support the Red Cross, because we believe in humanity, impartiality, neutrality, independence, voluntary service, and unity and universality, and especially now more than ever. The Red Cross has addressed not only the coronavirus 19 outbreak so swiftly and so humanely, but also with the social injustices that are taking place. This is an organization that values diversity and inclusion. They're not just talking about it, they're actually doing it, and you see it from within. And I couldn't be happier working for this organization. As far as the work,
So I'm fascinated by that because, if you'd asked me what the Red Cross does and what their values are, I would think of it as a fully formed, like boots on the ground emergency. You get that call at 2 in the morning and you can marshal an army of people. But I'm fascinated that you've pulled in these values that are going to resonate with other people and donors of the time. And so would you say that that's something that the Red Cross has always embraced, or is it something that they're highlighting based on where we are socially right now?
That is a great question. I started in the organization in October, and what I can tell you is that they have many, many groups that represent a variety of populations. From they've got the Black and African American group, and this is a group that meets and talks about all kinds of different things inside of the organization, externally in the organization, and really does an evaluation of what does diversity and inclusion look like in real time. And then you've got our Latino engagement group, you've got the LGBTQ engagement group. So those have been intact for many, many years, as from my understanding. So they're not just stepping up to the plate now. Now they are doing more as far as learning, having conversations regularly that are orchestrated and directed by professionals across the nation, so that we can have some of these tough conversations and work through and seek to understand the differences in all people, and just have a better understanding. So yeah, this is something that has been, these core values have been since day one.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So then Jarrett and I were talking with you briefly before we got started, but now let's move on to what you, Camille Ridley, what you do as somebody on the front lines of fundraising.
Yes.
This is a big question that I think all of us are having. Fundraising's hard enough.
Yes, it is.
Hard enough.
It is. It is.
And then we throw in this like crazy time.
Yep.
Talk to us about what it is that you do, how your requirements are structured, and what life looks like for you as a fundraiser.
Well, it isn't much difference in that I'm a donor development officer, and what our acronym is DDO. So what the DDOs do, we are considered to be the hunters, if you will, in the fundraising landscape with the Red Cross. And so we have very large portfolios, and almost all of our time is really spent calling donors. Now, in my portfolio, I've got around 526 donors. They're all managed donors. So we've got our managed and our unmanaged. And the Red Cross has so many donors. And in Arizona, we've got over 77,000 unmanaged donors. Those are donors giving anywhere from $5 to $1,000. In my portfolio, I focus on donors that are giving anywhere from $1,000 up to, say, the $10,000. So just below major giving. And so in my day today, I will pull my list of my donors, and I have a theme on what my conversation is going to be about. So it's either going to be discovery if they're brand spanking new. It will be cultivation if they're in that phase of the process. Stewardship, and those are my favorite calls, because calling to thank a donor for their wonderful gifts, it excites me. And then solicitations. And in my portfolio, I've been able to track the trends and when people are giving. A good chunk, I would say at least 75 to 80% of my donors in my portfolio give year end. And then I have my lapsed and long lapsed donors that are really primarily focused on disaster giving. And so you brought up, when you think of the Red Cross, you think of this emergency disaster response, which is in fact true. But we have a lot of other programs that go on throughout the year that are not related to disaster response. For example, we have the various areas. We've got the disaster cycle services. So they're the boots on the ground, or now virtually, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute, going out and responding to the wildfires, to other rescues that are happening here in Arizona, but across the nation, responding down south. Right now is hurricane season. And then backing up, we just came out of the tornado season. So we are responding all day, every day. And the largest area of regular response is in our home fire. Over 60% of our response is focused on home fires. And that's something that not everyone knows. So our home fire campaign is very, very strong. What we are able to provide to individuals that are displaced from a fire is a safe place to go, some financial help while they are relocating and getting resettled, food we're providing, as well as mental health services. And so right now, volunteers are spending a lot of time in the follow-up and making sure that individuals are safe and okay. And one other service, I mean, there's so many, but that is not the likely suspect, is also helping people who are displaced in these disasters get the medications they need. Because when you walk out of a home or a residence, you don't necessarily have your wallet, you don't have your identification, and the Red Cross is able to come in and help people get those resources without having identification and money. So that's the tip of the iceberg. But then we also have our training services. And now, even though we are in a virtual environment, across the nation, there are hundreds of classes being offered for CPR recertification, first-time certification that is being done virtually, AED certification. So the Red Cross has really stepped up to the plate and still continuing to operate almost at full capacity, but on a virtual sense. So the training is still happening. The resources are still available. There are people going boots on the ground, for instance, with the wildfires, but we are practicing social distancing. So you've got to mask up all the time, right? And you've got to keep your distance. But there are situations where you need a real person to actually go out and be on site, as well as the biomedical services. That is big. The Red Cross provides 40% of the blood supply here in our nation. That's huge. And so we have many, many strong campaigns taking place as far as encouraging donors to go out and give blood. And so you can go to the redcross.org and find a blood drive in your area. They're still happening. And we did when coronavirus first came to the landscape and really had the strong outbreak in the early stages, although we're going back into that. It was amazing to see how many people are coming out to donate blood. It was really, it was just over the top. And so our blood donors are incredible, and our financial donors are just as incredible. So
let me ask you this. I'm curious as to how you navigate engagement when it's always a crisis. Because, we have crisis fatigue, and which is very easy, right? And then we have a major pandemic that comes. How does that impact your relationship with your donors and your calls? Because it seems like we all have to make judgments about what we're going to invest in, what we're going to perceive, the disasters in our communities and nationally and globally. I think how we define them is changing every day.
It is, and that is part of the strategy. I look at my portfolio specifically and look at where they've given. I try and find out commonalities in their giving, and I try and put them into categories on what I will ask them for. So I've got my lapsed donors and my long lapsed donors. Those are the donors I will first call up when we are in what is considered gray sky disaster fundraising. And right now we are in that. And so I'll back up really quick. So blue sky is every day, when we're not having a major pandemic, when we're not having a major tornado or wildfire, we're in that blue sky. And so we share information with our donors on the other programs and activities that we're carrying out, with the hopes that they will convert from, say, a disaster donor only to that blue sky annual donor. And so that is really high focus on cultivation. So an example last week, with all the 2-3 weeks ago, with all the wildfires happening in Arizona specifically, I picked up the phone to check in with my Tucson donors with the Bighorn fire, just to make sure they were doing okay. And so those were what I consider cultivation emergency check-ins. And from there, I had some amazing conversations with donors. And if I felt in the conversation, and it's one of those intuitive, psychological decisions you've got to make, is this conversation going in the direction that I can ask them for a gift? And if not, if it was, strictly more on the cultivation, I'll follow up with an email. I may call them back a week later and ask for the gift. So there is a lot of intuition that goes into it. And believe it or not, as of late, I've had a lot of donors saying, well, I'm going to send a check. I'm going to make a donation. I haven't had to ask. So, when you build that relationship up and that trust and rapport, they are more than willing to help out. And the fact that someone's calling just to see if they're doing okay, my donors, I can't tell you how many of them in the last couple of months have said, you're calling just to check in and say hello? It's like, yes, I really am. So
said, Camille, earlier, you're like, and this is something that we should have been doing all along, right? Like just a humanitarian check-in, just how are you? You know, that return on relationship proves valuable, like it's just, and these are the individuals that show up. And I'm curious, have you seen an increase maybe from your portfolio of constituencies? Have you seen an increase of monthly giving?
Absolutely, absolutely. And especially in the spring, we did the Arizona Gives Day campaign, which was really nice. And it was around the one Red Cross. So we weren't really focusing on one of our service areas exclusively. But then even now with the wildfires that are happening across the nation, and then with the fundraising for biomedical services, people, I mean, everyone needs or has been touched by the needing blood, right? And so whether you give blood in Arizona or you give blood in California, that blood, it goes nationwide. And so that is an area that people are hearing and they're starting to learn and understand. Maybe they can't physically give blood, but they can give the money. And that is a strong area of where we're getting support at this moment in time. Let's see. And then with the wildfires too, that's been a big one. And then the southern storms. The southern storms, they have a several month span every single year, and it's been pretty rocky and rough. And so we've had donations coming in for that as well. So the giving keeps happening, and it is a common myth. I've heard a lot of people mention throughout the industry that people are not giving right now. I can't possibly ask them for money. And we can't make those assumptions because we don't know what someone's rainy day fund might be or their intentional philanthropic fund might be. So
I've seen an increase in generosity. Generosity. So, givers, people that are already very philanthropic minded, they are increasing their amount, or they're increasing the organizations in which they're giving to, right?
Yes.
So it's really diversifying. Second, generosity come up from individuals that may not have given before, and I don't know that to be scientifically proven, but it could be $25, $50, $5, so that significance comes at all levels. It truly does. And I'm curious, this has been a big conversation, the stimulus checks.
Yes.
Are you seeing these donations come to you from, someone, maybe myself, receiving a stimulus check and say, you know what, this is great. I'm doing okay, and I want to gift this forward to someone or an organization that's in more need. Have you seen that in your portfolio, Camille?
That's a great question. I am uncertain because the donors don't necessarily share that with me. But when I do see a jump in a gift going from, say, $500 up to $1,500, or there was a big check of $3,000, like, this is quite the bump. And given the time frame, it would make sense to me that it could very well be tied to that stimulus check. I don't know for a fact, but there are some donations that come in, I'm like, got me thinking. And so, yeah.
And you can typically see when it's that dollar amount,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Some organizations have done specific solicitation campaigns around that.
Yeah.
To just say, to attract, and I always say, for those of you listening, I always think the best way to share that story is to use an individual success story. Like, have the individual donor share the reason in which they decided to donate their stimulus check. So instead of being the solicitor, highlight the donor and, their story.
I like that. That's nice. And since we may have another round of the stimulus checks, that will be a new tool for the toolbox.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it is. And I think that kind of takes me to my next question that Jarrett and I have. And again, our time is just whistled away. But I'd love for you, and this is like a huge question because it's like looking into that crystal ball that we always ask our guests to share with us. But what are you seeing some of these funding trends for the Red Cross kind of move towards, given where we are, given where we're probably going to be for a while? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, a lot of the donors in my portfolio, because I oversee donors in Arizona and New Mexico. I did have some donors in El Paso, and right now they're giving a lot again to biomedical services with the blood efforts, and we have now COVID-19 antibody testing and the collection of convalescent plasma, and there's been so much media coverage all across the entire nation and internationally, because the Red Cross has the Crescent societies, so there's a Red Cross in almost every country out there. And so we are seeing, of course, the continual response to major disasters, those level 2 to 4 disasters, which are the wildfires. And here, California is going to be ramping up really high. So over this summer, we see a lot of money coming in for wildfire, for the biomedical services. And as far as trends in giving, I believe, at least in my portfolio, I will still continue to see a lot of donors give at the end of the year. But then we're also, in being creative, we will be bringing a virtual 5K online, and that will be late this summer. And so just trying to find other engagements for people to participate, because not everybody just wants to write a check. Not everybody wants to go online or text to donate. They want to do an engagement activity. So that will be coming here very soon. And I think that will be a successful campaign, and one that is not the spring, it's not the summer, it's going into that fall, which is not typically in the trends I've seen in fundraising a strong time for people to give, unless you're doing a fall gala. Or another type of event. So we'll test that out quite a bit. And then also for Arizona, with Arizona Gives Day. Now, if there are so many states that do have Give Day programs, that is a really great way to camp onto an existing event that you can sell the giving and state pride. You know, it's amazing how many people will give on that day, because they want to rally with the hundreds of thousands of people in their home network to raise money. And we had a very successful campaign. So those are new areas and new engagements that we have. And I've got a colleague in Louisiana, and they had their Gives Day in May, and it was very successful as well. So finding things that are existing that you can bring into the fold. And the Red Cross has a bunch of other ways to give, but we're seeing more though on that blue sky fundraising engagement, which is really great. So yeah, lots of different trends happening, and more to come as we go through this virtual fundraising environment.
Right. Well, it's definitely a time for creativity, and as we were talking off air, the disruption process, you can embrace it or you can shun it. And if you embrace this time of change and take some risks, you're going to you fail, and you fail fast, you learn, and you try and be thoughtful about what risks you're going to take. But I think there's a big argument for this point in time. It's so hard to believe we are now at the second half of the year.
Yes, I know. It's like, where did the time go? We're starting our new fiscal. Well, we started our new fiscal year. I'm like, oh my gosh, wow, how did that happen?
Yeah. So
you blink and you wake up, and here we are.
Yeah. So I think for a lot of us, this, obviously has been a discombobulation, to say the least.
Yes.
But the opportunity for coming up with some new things is pretty phenomenal. So.
It is. And I'd like to share one thing that I came up with, because I've always been a risk taker. I love to take risks. And I've been so thankful that I've had leadership that has been willing to let me jump off the ledge. And if it's a failure, well, we fail up and we find what worked, what didn't work. And it's no different with the Red Cross. And so something that I came up with, and it did have a small group of participation, but nonetheless, I'm like, what can I do to connect with my donors virtually at this time that will also give them some joy and some reprieve? And ASU Care Cultural Center has some wonderful virtual concerts that they have. And last Thursday, there was a concert, and the guitarist is out of Tucson. So I invited my donors in Tucson to watch this virtual concert, followed by a Microsoft Teams virtual happy hour to get to know each other and just talk about it. I had one person show up, but nonetheless, I think that this type of engagement has potential for more participation in the future. And given I sent it out a week beforehand, now I'll be looking for those virtual engagements, even though it's not a show that the Red Cross is putting on, but it is an engagement that the donors will enjoy. And so I'm going to be looking for those types of things. And then again, following it up with the virtual happy hour and allowing them to get to know their peers and have some dialogue. So that's something new. I tested it, and I'll continue to test it.
That is so creative, Camille, and kudos to you. And, you know, you'll add one more, you'll add 5 more, and continue to grow. And you're right. You have to take the chance. You have to take the risk. And I applaud you for that. I think it's super creative, and it's a great engage and to connect with some local talent, and then to have that face-to-face dialogue.
Yeah, and then the other thing I'm thinking is a virtual birthday party, because one thing I love to do is make birthday phone calls every month. I've got my list of whose birthday it is this month. I have a wonderful intern at the college here who writes out the birthday cards. We get those into the mail. People are very surprised and delighted at something as simple as a birthday call. And so that's also something that I'm seeing is allowing people to feel light and feel connected to someone over the phone, and is a great tool for this relationship building. So I highly recommend. And what's better than getting a birthday phone call out of the blue, you know? Who doesn't like that?
You could be Julia Patrick and have the nonprofit nerd put on a birthday hat and like have streamers and everything, which she did for my birthday. So you're right.
I love it.
It was a hoot and a half. Hey, Camille, this has been amazing. I really enjoyed what you've shared with us. I know the American Red Cross is such an institution in our nation and in our culture, but it's still nonetheless an institution that needs to embrace change and do things differently. And so it's been really cool to have you actually share with us what your life is like in fund development work. So we're thrilled that you've been with us, and we look forward to continuing the conversation and seeing how the American Red Cross, you know, interacts with all of our lives. Again, I've been Julia Patrick. That makes it seem like when the show's over, I'm somebody else.
Ransom.
And you've been Jarrett Ransom. Hey, we've really enjoyed having Camille Ridley on with us and learned a lot. And you know, I think the Red Cross is one of those organizations that so many of us in the nonprofit world look to for other ideas and inspiration, because it communicates the philanthropic nature of a culture, I think. And so it's super cool, super, super cool. Here is Camille's information. Check her out, see what she's got cooking. Lots of exciting things coming down the road. I want to thank our sponsors. We could not do this without you. We're so privileged that you're on this journey with us. And this has been our episode for the Nonprofit Show. You know, I think, Jarrett, this might be the 100th episode.
What?
We should have like streamers. And
I know. We'll just do this with our fingers and everybody can print it. But anyway, hey, everybody, thanks so much for joining us. As we do every day, we end with this little mantra. You know, stay well so you can do well. We'll see you here tomorrow. Thanks so much. Thank you, Camille.
Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
We'll see you soon.
Okay.